Social distancing.
Jeez.
Yeah, this is great.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of This Is My Bourbon Podcast. I am your host, Perry. I am very happy after some severe technical difficulties to welcome back to the show the Bourbon Boys themselves, Curtis and Swan. Guys, hello.
Hi.
What's up?
Hi, buddies.
Took us a while.
Peek behind the curtain. It took us a long time to get here, but we finally did, and it's all good now. It's all good. You know what we get to do? We get to drink whiskey. We get to talk about it. We get to say, hey, this is the thing that's been going on in the world, and it doesn't have to be about coronavirus. So that's something special that we get to enjoy together. So we start every episode with a segment called Flying Blind, where I blind these guys on a pour, and they do not know what it is. We are finishing up basically the first batch of samples that we had used for a few weeks of recording. And Swan, you missed last week's episode.
I did,
But-
yeah.
Did you see what our review was by chance?
I actually didn't. I've been working a lot, so I completely missed it.
So it was we used sample E, and it was the David Nicholson Reserve.
The Black Label?
Yes.
Sweet. I love that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. So you can have a little sample of that if you feel so inclined. But so this is sample A from the batch of samples that I got these guys when social distancing and quarantine all started, and I'm excited to see what you guys think about this blind pour.
It's pretty light.
Light but pleasant. There's a pleasantness to it, I think.
I'd agree.
Yeah.
Oh, by the
Nothing,
way,
nothing out of the ordinary.
Yeah, it's pretty straightforward. By the way, I am recording the video of this too, so maybe Patreon's going to get the video for this, or YouTube. I don't honestly know what's going to happen with this video. I just was like, hey, I'm going to do
We'll
this.
put it
Are you
on.
guys okay with it? We'll find out. But
Yeah, why not?
So
that
we'll
case,
see how this goes. But
We'll get the lighting a little better.
yeah, now you look good, Kurt.
Yeah.
I mean, you always look good, but you know.
Yeah, sure.
Now you look extra good.
Thanks, I
Now
appreciate
you look
that.
excellent.
Yeah. At least I can get something right, apparently.
Dude, don't beat yourself up, man.
Huh. This is interesting.
Light spice on the finish.
Yeah. This reminds me of Waffens.
Interesting.
I'm not
kinda
getting
got that-
enough.
Just tobacco-y. I don't know.
I'm not getting enough of the like peanut butter, like the peanuts that you usually get with the nuttiness of that. Swan's like, I disagree, but
I mean, I don't know. I'm not a big fan of this one, to be honest.
Really?
Yeah.
That's interesting because a couple weeks ago, you were actually drinking this, Swan.
Is it the
on
pink?
air. And you guys
feel-
couldn't see me make a face about it because you said that you were drinking it, and I was like, well, dang, I gave him a sample of it. It's just Sazerac rye. It's just baby Saz.
Yeah. I don't know. I think my bottle tastes different. This is not.
Really?
Yeah, this is different. Mine's had a long time to open up. I've had it since probably 2018, and it's been open.
Wow. I've
so
had this for probably about a year as well. I'm so surprised you don't like this one.
I mean, it's fine. I don't have any issues with Baby Saz. I don't reach for it very often, and I'm constantly reminded when I do actually have it that it's kind of meh, you know?
Sure. Sure.
Which is fine, because, I mean, they've got the Saz 18 to kind of show off a little. But, I don't know. This is definitely one I like in a cocktail, and I can see why they named it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree on that.
Well,
I think
speaking
it's
of
good
cocktails,
though. I mean, it's very like, I feel like it's standard rye,
Yeah.
taste. It's good. It's quality. Like it's not bad by any means. And
I mean, it is very much a beginner's rye whiskey.
yeah,
So, yeah. But speaking of cocktails and what we've been drinking recently, what have you guys been drinking recently?
I've been drinking the Cooper's Craft 100.
Nice. Nice.
Yeah.
I need to pick up a bottle of that. I never actually did. I think I only ever drank it off at Chad.
Yeah, no, it's surprisingly okay. I don't know how to explain it. That whole grooved barrel thing is just odd, but we recently just ordered some like Cooper's Craft coffee. They make some coffee from Cooper's Craft, and I wanted to just try that again and see what kind of barrel influence it has. And I still don't like coffee, so it's just me drinking and making weird faces, but like it's fine.
Kurt, what about you, buddy? What have you been drinking?
I've been having some early times.
Nice. Like the bottled and bond, right? You're not drinking the whiskey.
Yeah, not the the bottle and bond for sure.
Sure, not drinking like just a handle of like the 84 proof or whatever they have.
Dude,
With
at
the
this point, it's like...
Yeah, with the problems we've been having, might as well. It doesn't get worse.
Might as well, indeed. Yeah. I've been drinking a bunch of different stuff. Quarantine has put me in a beer mood for some reason, so I've been drinking the Rogue Dead Guy Ale, which is one of my favorite beers of all time. Also I made a berry old fashioned last night. I posted it on the social media pages. So what I did was I didn't have simple syrup, so I just took like a big thing of sugar, dumped it in the bottom, muddled it with the berries and bitters, added just a little bit of water, and then threw the bourbon in and some ice, and it turned out really good. I used Old Granddad
really
114. Good. It was fantastic, dude. It was I used raspberries and blueberries for those, and I actually threw a little bit of blood orange bitters in there as well.
Ooh, okay.
So it was a very fruity cocktail, but it turned out delicious. And using the Old Granddad 114 helped the whiskey to cut through, and boy did it. Somehow I even managed to stay up until about 2 a.m. watching a movie. So
I was getting
Wow.
up round two.
we'll
Yeah, I
talk
did-
about that in tips and bits what it is though. But
Oh, okay.
let me tell you, I got a couple ones this week. But then I also have to say a special thank you to Clint Mann, who is one of our. It sounds like a fake name that he used to check into a hotel, but he is one of our patrons, and he sent me basically just a whole box of Texas bourbons and whiskeys. And I mean, anywhere from like 750s to 375s to samples, like 200 ml samples. So tomorrow night, which is, the day after this episode comes out, my live stream will be all Texas whiskeys. So we'll see how that goes.
That's very
It's
cool.
like a starter pack for Texas whiskey.
It's a lot of whiskey. Like, I mean, I'm not going to be able to drink all of it, but there is a good deal of whiskey in there. So
I believe in you. I think you can do it. I think you can drink all of it.
I miss having people helping me when in times of quarantine.
But the internet loves watching you make a fool of yourself. So just all of it.
Yeah, what's up with that, by the way?
I don't know. I have no idea.
I don't either.
I mean, that's why I'm here every week. So
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. Well, let's hop into the news of the week. There is not as much as was definitely expected, but there's a couple of things we wanted to touch on. The first is kind of a feel-good story out of Florida, of all places. A veteran bought a Van Winkle 25-year decanter at basically double what it was being offered for. It was originally offered for $20K, and he bought it for $40K to support the staff at his favorite restaurant in Florida. First off, holy crap.
Yeah.
That's insane. And the man's name, they didn't reveal the name of the man who purchased it, but the couple who own the restaurant are just apparently thrilled, as I think I would be too, to see that kind of money coming through. I mean, that's just amazing. This guy took it upon himself to, buy one bottle of whiskey in support of people that he loves and wants to take care of. I just think that's it gives you the warm fuzzies.
Perry, do you have some explaining to do about this article? I'm going to read this verbatim. The rare bottle, number 413 out of just 710 produced, according to the press release, was in Perry's vintage liquor collection for a few years.
Perry is the last name of the people who own the restaurant.
Mm-hmm. Likely story.
All right, here we go. It's Blame Perry Hour on This Is My Bourbon Podcast.
You're the reason my microphone wouldn't work. It has nothing to do with my setup at home.
Nothing at all. No. Anyway, just cool. I thought it was something special to kind of talk about instead of talking about all the sad negatives that have been going on recently. I wish that I could afford to do something like that, but alas, $40,000 is a lot of money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've been thinking about that too. Like, I would love to be able to give back in this time of need, And if I had the resources, I no doubt would. I'm sure there's 1,000,001 people that feel the same way. But yeah, I wish. I'm like, can I? I'll just drop 10,000, right?
Yeah, unless I can drive that thing of whiskey to work, it's not happening. I can't drop that kind of money on that kind of thing.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, I can't either.
It's not even close.
I mean, that's kind of the reason, like, why I've wanted to do this, and I use the term "wanted to" very loosely. But for anybody who doesn't know, I'm now working for the unemployment insurance hotline in Kentucky, and boy, are there some angry people in this Commonwealth who don't understand why they have not received their unemployment check yet. Swan, stop pointing at yourself. Yeah, so help out any way you can, I guess. That's what we're getting at. I gotta find something else to pour. What do you guys want to drink?
I'm gonna have some Knob Creek.
Oh yeah, that's right. I'll have some as well.
He's got a little sample of it.
Yeah. The rest of the news is kind of just about releases and TTB labels. The first release is coming out of Jim Beam, and this is shocking and something that's going to be a new staple of their product line too. It's a 12-year-old Knob Creek. 12 years old. It's still going to be 100 proof. It is coming out sometime this month, or has already come out. I haven't really had the chance to go look at stores or anything for new bottles. But this is crazy cool. It's going to be from the center cut of the rack houses. That sounded weird coming out of my mouth. Rick houses, which is something that Jim Beam has always kind of lauded themselves for, the products that come out of the center cut of their warehouse. Are you guys excited about this? It's $60 a bottle for a 12-year-old 100 proof whiskey.
I'm not mad at that. I mean, I think I would have been a little more mad at that like a year and a half, 2 years ago, when there was 15-year-old Knob Creek picks just sitting in my liquor stores around me. And now that they're pretty consistently like 9, 10 years old when I do actually find them at Liquor Barn or Total Wine, the extra age, I'm willing to pay a little bit more for it, even at 100 proof, because it's not exactly proof down at 100 proof. It's still up there. So I'm not mad at it. I do like that it says right here, availability widely available. Yeah,
we'll see about that.
That's my favorite hope and promise from Jim Beam.
Yeah, what's your thought on it actually being available? What do you anticipate it actually being?
I am anticipating it being definitely not easy to find. You guys remember, what was the age-stated one that came out last year? It was a Blue Label?
It was the same thing. I think it was a 12-year-old, and they're just making it widely available now.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, and I never saw it at all. I saw plenty of the twice finished rye, but I never saw this one.
You know what's funny? In the time leading up to quarantine, I actually did see that 12-year-old release from last year quite a bit on the shelf. And people just weren't buying it. So I don't know. Maybe it's still going to be there in a month or so. But I guess the difference is that was more of a limited release, whereas this is supposed to be wide. But we'll find out, I guess. I'm excited either way.
Ultimately,
I can't
that's
be
what it
mad
comes
about a
down
new
to.
Jim Beam or a new Knob Creek release. This next one I am extremely excited about. Extremely excited about. The newest Bardstown Bourbon Company collaboration series. Oh man, I cannot say that name. It's an Armagnac cask finished bourbon. It's an MGP 12-year-old bourbon that was then finished for 18 months in these Armagnac casks from... Should I try it? Should I try the name?
Go for it.
Chateau de Labad? I don't know.
Chateau de Labad? I don't know. Labode? Who knows?
Oh, maybe it is Labode. I don't know what's happening. I don't know. Anyway, it's going to be...
That's why we're from the
math.
great state of Kentucky.
We'd be calling it the Chateau Labady.
Yeah.
Jeez. Anyway, 59.2% ABV, $125. Going to be only 2,000 bottles in California, Florida, Illinois, Indiana, Kentucky, and Tennessee. Look, having been a fan of everything that Bardstown Bourbon Company has been putting out, I'm pretty excited for this one, especially being a fan of Armagnac. I like Armagnac a lot. I really do. If I had one alternative that wasn't bourbon or rye that I could drink, should all of the bourbon and rye whiskeys go out, just disappear in the world, I feel like Armagnac would be the one that I would replace it with. So,
I honestly don't know if I've ever had it.
it's so good, man.
We need to just do an episode on it.
We absolutely do. Yeah. I need to get more first. Because what I have, the supply that I have is dwindling at best. But yeah, we'll definitely do an Armagnac episode. I think that sounds awesome.
Yeah,
Do that
that'd be
for
cool.
sure. Next three releases we have actually already talked about on the show before. So, haha, joke's on you, big bourbon press. We already knew about it. It is the three kosher releases coming from Buffalo Trace. Their rye recipe bourbon, their wheat bourbon, and their straight rye. All of these are going to be for $40. They're all going to be 94 proof, and they're supposed to be out right now. Who knows?
Yeah, we'll see on that.
Yeah.
They could just, not actually exist. Wouldn't that be something to come out of quarantine and then discover that all of the whiskeys that we thought were going to be out there just never actually existed? It was all just a lie. It was like, instead of April Fool's being one day, it was the entire month.
The entire month of April, just a joke.
Yeah.
Which, to be fair, kind of
That's
a
how
joke.
it's felt. That is how it's felt. So, can't deny that one.
I don't think I like that. I don't want to do that.
No, but we had talked about these probably about a month ago?
Yeah.
I think. And if we can find them, I would be very interested in trying them, but I am not sure that that's ever going to be a reality. I mean, you're basically getting a slightly higher proof Buffalo Trace bourbon, like their stock Buffalo Trace, a slightly higher proof Weller Special Reserve, and a slightly higher proof Sazerac Rye. So
Yeah, and it's approved kosher, which, I mean, I guess someone may, appreciate that, but for me, it just seems like a few extra proof points.
yeah. So we'll see. I don't know if there's much to be said about that past. It'd be great to try, but who's to say whether or not we'll actually see it in our lifetime?
Yeah.
The next one comes from the Foregate Whiskey Company, Kelvin Collaboration 2. It is a bourbon finished in cognac and rum casks, 63.2% ABV, $200. Only being sold in Kentucky and Tennessee, 2,474 bottles. Swan, you were shaking your head.
I don't think this is what I'm supposed to be spending my stimulus check on.
Is that what you're gonna spend your stimulus check on?
I mean, I don't know what I'm doing with that just yet. We'll find out.
Oh yeah.
No, actually, I've only had one of the Foregate. I think it was a 5.5-year-old, and I was just kind of on it. Which I agreed that it's probably not their best expression, because I think they did a 12-year-old as well, and I've heard better things about that one. But I don't know, man. They have been bouncing all over the place. They have not really stuck in one lane long enough for me to get a good feel of them. So
Sure.
I just need more experience with it, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm on the same
absolutely.
boat on about dropping that kind of money, and I have noticed that it has been kind of back and forth a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. These next two products I had honestly never even heard of before. It is Old Hamer. I think it's got to be pronounced Hamer, right, Swan? We had a conversation about this off air. There's no way it's Hammer, because it's Hamer.
I think you're totally right.
I just want to get just absolutely drunk on this and make Hammer Time jokes. Like, that's it's not going to sound right if I get like half a fifth in and I'm just like Hammer Time. No, I can't. But sure.
Yeah. Distilled in Indiana, it's a straight rye. There's actually two products here. One is a 2-year-old 90 proof for $28. And the other one is a 2-year-old at cask strength, 57.5%, for $40. And it says that both of these products are going to be released in Indiana with plans to expand. So I don't know. I mean, I'll try any rye. I like some 2-year-old rye whiskeys. One of them we're going to be talking about here in a little bit in regards to chicken cock. So
I like the old style label too.
Yeah, I do too. I like that quite a bit.
That looks pretty clean.
Like that they pointed out that this is the proof for batch 1. So there's going to be multiple batches of this cask strength. So I'm interested to see their range on that. If they're going to stay a little more Four Roses, or if they're going to be a little more Elijah Craig barrel proof in their proof points.
Yeah.
So that's basically all the news for the week. We have just 3 different TTB filings to get through. The first one is another Armagnac finished bourbon, which has got me all tingly with excitement. It is the 2020 limited edition Yellowstone Kentucky Straight Bourbon Whiskey. 101 proof, finished in Armagnac casks. I love this. I love it so much. I'm so excited. I have really liked every single one of the Yellowstone Limiteds that I've had. They've not put out a bad product in that line, I don't think. How do you guys feel about this?
I think they're all pretty good. Some of them can be a little inaccessible for price, but I mean that's I don't
Very
know.
true.
They're up there. But then gosh, his name's escaping me right now. Who's the guy that we always see with Yellowstone?
Oh, Stephen Fonte.
Yeah. Amazing guy.
I love
Absolutely amazing. If I can get a sample from him, honestly, this could be like just straight off the still, and I'd be like, this is the best thing I've ever had. I mean, he's just that good. But I'm excited for it. I think I'm glad that everyone's kind of getting into the Armagnac finish because last year I think it was rum cask. Everyone was going nuts over rum cask stuff.
Yeah. What do you think the switch to all that is? Just something new that kind of a domino effect?
Just trying to change it up, I imagine.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. I'm just going to throw this out there now. I don't know if it's going to happen, but I wouldn't be surprised to see Basil Hayden do an Armagnac finish this year.
Oh, wow.
Because they are big on following those trends.
Okay. Yeah,
I
that'd
didn't
be
know
cool.
that.
They did a rum cast finish last year, and they kind of matched a lot of the other rum cast finish stuff that they put out.
Yeah. Perry's been loving the Armagnac then.
I'm
Hopefully
all
this
about it,
whole
man.
year. Yeah.
I'm all about it. I'd be more than happy to get some of that.
I
The
love
next one is
wait a second.
go
I
ahead.
love on the back where it says, "From our hearts to fill your glass."
oh, I love that. That makes me
Thanks,
happy.
Yellowstone.
Next release is actually a rum cask finished. So they're still
Talk
out
about
there,
one.
but
Yep.
it's a MGP rye from Redemption. Rum cask finished 94 proof, and it says batch 1, so I guess they might have more than one release of that. So I mean, I've not had a lot from Redemption. What I have had has been fine. I'm interested to see what this might turn out to be. Do I think it's going to be exceptional? Who's to say, man? Who's to say?
Yeah. And I do like that. It is interesting that it says the cast series, so I'm assuming that there will be more to come, right? Maybe in an Armagnac?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Hey, I see what you did there.
Yeah.
But I am serious. Like, I will be interested to see what else is there. The label's fun. Giving
Yes.
off very, very much Tommy Bahama, like, Margaritaville vibes.
I'm excited for it. I think Redemption's put out quite a bit of stuff that I really haven't tried. Like they have a wheated whiskey as well. And
Yeah.
I just have never seen it. And they've got like a high rye and then a rye and then just a regular bourbon. I mean, it's a lot of interesting stuff that I've not touched.
We'll have to do a deep dive into their products one time for the show.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So we'll see about that. Next product, actually, I'm pretty excited for, especially considering that this company's been very nice to the show as of late, and they sent us some fantastic samples, which I tried on my live stream last week. Barrel Craft Spirits is releasing a rum, 14 years old, 129.4 proof.
Yeah. The thing that I think I'm most excited about this is if you read the back of the label, it looks like they pulled, hold on, it's got a little hard to read on TTB. Rum cast from Barbados. I can't read that.
Guyana.
In Jamaica. So they
It's
completely,
Guyana.
there you go. But they've actually gone through and done this much like they've done their bourbons in the past, where they've kind of curated and made exactly what they want. And it's 14 years is going to be, I'm assuming, just like bourbon, the lowest age. And it's still 129.4. That's nuts.
That's an intense rum.
Yeah.
So, hey, man, I'll drink that.
Yeah, I'll try
I'll
it.
definitely get all over that. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, like I said, not much in the way of TTB releases this week and news as well. So, what we actually did this week is I got the opportunity to sit down with Greg Snyder, the master distiller at Chicken Cock. And I had a really, sit down. We did it virtually, but had a really great conversation with Greg. So what you're going to get to hear is all of that right now. And then Curtis and Swan and I are going to come back afterwards, and we're going to taste the bourbon and the rye and talk about it a little bit before we wrap up the show. So enjoy. It is a real treat to be able to welcome in this guest to This Is My Bourbon podcast. This is one of the most important people at a very special distillery in the United States. Please welcome Greg Snyder of Chicken Cock Whiskey to the show. Greg, how are you?
Hi, Perry. I'm doing great. Thank you for letting me be on the show tonight.
Absolutely. I'm so happy to get to chat with you. So The big reason why you are chatting with me today is because Chicken Cock has a new product that's coming out, and it is your all's rye whiskey. I'm very excited to try this. You guys were very gracious enough to send me samples not only of the straight bourbon whiskey, but also the rye whiskey. So tell me a little bit about each of these products before we get into the weeds of it.
Okay, yeah, sure. Again, just to give you a little background on the brand itself,
Yes, please.
Chicken Cock Whiskey is actually an old brand that originated in Paris, Kentucky in 1856. And it's interesting. I've in the last couple of years I've been involved with the company and the brand. A lot of people doing tastings and that they say, "Man, where'd you come up with that name?" And I didn't come up with the name. The name actually was originated in 1856 when a man by the name of James A. Miller started a distillery and started a brand called Chicken Cock Whiskey. And of course, back in 1856, a male chicken was called a cock, just like South Carolina Gamecocks and what have you. So, but the brand did well. It has a lot of history, pre-prohibition, during prohibition. Actually, during Prohibition, when Prohibition came along, the distillery had to shut down. Like many others, they didn't have the means to acquire a medicinal alcohol permit, and so the brand actually was sold to a company up in Montreal, Canada, and this company actually produced rye whiskey. And so they would bottle it. They'd actually put it in a can to protect that bottle when it was bootlegged across the border back into the U.S. So Chicken Cock Whiskey actually got its claim to fame in a lot of speakeasies, but its biggest claim to fame and notoriety it was the house whiskey at the Cotton Club up in Harlem, New York, which was probably one of the most famous speakeasies. But long towards the end of Prohibition, the brand sold back to a company called National Distillers, and they reopened the distillery because they had a medicinal alcohol permit. And so Chicken Cock, before Prohibition was over with, they actually were making medicinal alcohol. And then Prohibition was repealed, and the brand continued to grow and do well up until about the 1950s. The distillery actually burned down. And at that time, the company decided not to rebuild it, and the brand sat idle up until about 2012. Matti Antila, the founder of Grain and Barrel Spirits, acquired the brand, and he had a vision to resurrect it back to Kentucky. And so he was working at it, of course, like most companies in the bourbon boom today. When you just getting started, it takes time to age bourbon. And so, like most companies, he went out and he sourced bourbon and whiskey and bottled it under the Chicken Cock name. And so along about June, July of 2017, I've been in the business 42 years myself, Perry. And so along about 2017, I decided to get out of the corporate rat race and kind of ramp up my retirement plan. And that was not to retire, but to start my own consulting company. So that's how I hooked up with Grain and Barrel Spirits and met Matti and helped him with the supply chain. But then eventually he asked me to become his master distiller. One of the things I did was actually negotiate a contract. Bardstown Bourbon Company. I'm sure you're in the Lexington area, right, Perry?
Yes, I am. I am very much in Lexington.
You're familiar with Bardstown Bourbon Company?
Quite, yes. They're some of my favorite people in the entire world.
They're awesome people. They got a fantastic facility, and they're making some great whiskey. So they have a collaborative distillation program. And so in August of 2018 is when we actually laid down our first 600 plus barrels. My role as master distiller, I basically gave them the Chicken Cock mash bill for our bourbon, which is 70% rye, 70% corn, 21% rye, and 9% malted barley. And then I also provided them with the, basically the times and temperatures for cooking, the fermentation, distillation specifications, and I also select the barrels that we age our bourbon in. And so, we laid down our first barrels in August of 2018. In February of 2019, we produced another 600 plus barrels. And then just here about 2 or 3 weeks ago, we laid down our third batch of 600 barrels. And those were a little bit special, which I'll get into in a little bit here. But
Sure.
the rye whiskey you asked about, I mean, it's part of what we're promoting. It's been 75 years or longer since Chicken Cock actually had a rye whiskey. And so while our whiskeys are aging, again, part of my responsibility is to go out and locate high quality whiskey that we can put under the Chicken Cock name to bridge that gap until ours becomes of proper age through the maturation process.
Right.
So this rye whiskey, I actually tried several different ryes. And, I basically, one of the things I don't do is I don't necessarily focus on age. I get samples and I do my sensory analysis and I determine just based on that sensory analysis, what we're trying to achieve as far as the aromas and the taste profile. And this bourbon, I'll be very transparent, it actually came from Bardstown Bourbon Company. As I said, I sampled some from a couple of different companies, but this was fantastic. I really like the spicy notes, the complexity of it, and I'm very pleased with what we're offering.
And I will be very honest too. I just tried the rye for the first time as you were talking about it. I made sure to look up the mash bill as well. The rye, it's 95.5.
That's correct.
Which typically turns into being some of my favorite rye whiskeys. There's something about removing the corn from the mash bill that seems to allow the rye to just sing and just be so present in the whiskey, in the final product.
Yeah.
So how many different samples did you kind of go through? And did you find yourself leaning more towards the higher rye content as you were sampling things, or was it kind of like everything was a little bit, fairly even until you came to the final decision that this 95.5 was your rye whiskey?
You hit it right on the head. I 10 of my 42 years in the business, Perry, I was actually the managing director at Wild Turkey Distillery. And, back then we made a rye whiskey. We didn't make a whole heck of a lot, but because we didn't sell a heck of a lot. But the rye whiskey that we made at Wild Turkey was somewhere in the 60 to 65% rye range.
Sure.
And then it had, a pretty, 25 to 30% corn. And you're right. I mean, that corn just it kind of masks some of the great flavors that you can get out of the rye. So the 95.5 is the ideal mash bill for rye whiskey, in my opinion.
Yeah, and there is, you kind of have to dance around Jimmy Russell at some point too, and say, we're thinking about doing this, Jimmy, but we got something for you to try. So I imagine that you had a little bit of trouble trying to make Jimmy okay with everything during that period.
I love Jimmy. Jimmy's a dear friend. He's like a brother to me. I mean, like I said, I worked with him for over 10 years, and he's the last of the true master distillers in my opinion.
He's a good man. He's a good man. But we'll of course get back to talking about Chicken Cock. So let's talk about this bourbon first and foremost, because this is kind of your standard product. This is what people are going to see on the shelves alongside the rye whiskey. But if anybody has any kind of familiarity with the brand of Chicken Cock, it's going to be the Kentucky Straight Bourbon Whiskey. So kind of twofold question. This mash bill, you talked about it being 75% corn, and forgive me for not remembering the rest of was it 25% or 21% rye and 9% malted barley?
The bourbon that we're laying down now, our mash bill is 70-21-9. Okay.
Okay, sorry. Yeah.
So what's in that bottle is actually source bourbon. as I said, until ours gets of proper age and maturation. So that is
Right.
actually a blend of a couple bourbons. And unfortunately, we had to sign a non-disclosure when we acquired that bourbon. So I'm not able to be as transparent on that as I'd like to be. But
Of course, yeah. And my question was not going to kind of lead into where you were sourcing it, of course, because I understand not everybody is able to talk about it. So my question really though is when you were crafting this mash bill for Chicken Cock, was that a trial and error process, or was it pulled from what the original mash bill was of Chicken Cock, even from 1856?
yeah, that's a great question. You know, we did a lot of research, and Monty, prior to my involvement, Monty did a lot of research himself, the founder of Grain and Barrel. You know, he actually went to Paris, Kentucky, and tried to search in some of their archives to see if he could locate the actual mash bill, the original mash bill. And of course, there was nothing to be found. You know, you can go to the Oscar Getty
Sure.
Museum down in Bardstown, and they have some of the old pre-prohibition bottles on display down there. And unfortunately, there's no way you can test that whiskey and check the DNA on it to see what the mash bill is. There's just no way to do that. So, you know, based on some of the tastings that we did, you know, that's the mash bill we came up, we felt would be as close as we were going to get to the original.
Fair, definitely fair at that point. So I applaud you guys for trying to stay as close to tradition in that case, especially in terms of what people might be familiar with Chicken Cock. But I also, of course, just tasted the bourbon because it is sitting in front of me. It is such a delicate palate. It has so much nuance to it, and it just, even for a 90 proof whiskey, it has a depth of complexity and flavor to it that is really kind of hard to find with most distilleries now. How did you all land on 90 proof? Was that something that was common with Chicken Cock back in the day?
Yeah, you know, actually back in long ago, you know, a lot of the bourbons were around 100 proof. You know, some were lower than that, but the 90 proof actually stems from basically some of our trial and error type of work. You know, everything that we've offered out so far, we've kind of sampled it at varying proofs. And so far, everything that we've offered as far as the bourbon and the rye, you know, 90 proof seemed to really, I guess, provide the flavor profile that existed without over diluting it.
Sure.
You know, we have offered some limited offers in the past from some of the source whiskey that we've done at higher proofs. But for our everyday, our standard go-to bourbon, which this will be going forward, you know, we decided 90 proof is the mark.
And speaking of some of these limited editions that you all came out with as well, you're doing things with them that a lot of distilleries are not necessarily considering. One of them being a beer finished bourbon, a beer barrel finished bourbon, rather. That is so fascinating to me. What led you all to make that decision? How did you kind of come to the conclusion that that was something that you wanted to put out into the market?
Well, I kind of touched on it earlier. You know, part of our business strategy to bridge the gap until we have our own bourbon that we've made and laid down at Bardstown
Sure.
Brewing Company. You know, we've tried to come up with a number of different innovations and unique offerings. You know, going out and sourcing whiskey nowadays is not an easy process. There's been such a demand. You know, number one, finding high quality whiskey is difficult in itself, but then finding high quality whiskey that you can afford and bottle and sell
Sure.
is another challenge. So, so trying to come up with different offerings like this. You mentioned the one with the beer barrel finish. I think there may be a few bottles left in Lexington and Louisville, but not much.
If we're lucky.
It was very small. Yeah, it was, I think it was somewhere around 1,860 bottles total is
Wow.
all we did of that. But give you a little story on that, Perry. It was we had a 10-year-old double barrel batch. It was chicken cock. We actually sourced the bourbon out at MGP, out of Lawrenceburg, Indiana, and that was one of the early on products we had, and that was really the first one that I got intimately involved with. Basically, I asked the founder of the company, let me have 12 barrels and do something unique with it. I like single barrels, but my biggest rub with single barrels is they can be so inconsistent barrel to barrel.
Absolutely.
You can put the same whiskey, from the same batch and two barrels that came from the same cooperage and the same stave mill, and put them side by side in the same warehouse and age them for the same length of time. And when the whiskey comes out, man, it can be all over the map. So, so anyhow, I wanted to get some more consistency. So what I did was we had some whiskey that was just become 10 years old. And so first thing I did is I started knocking down the proof until I got to the point where I felt the alcohol burn subsided and the true characters of the bourbon, the caramel and vanilla, really overtook the profile. And I said, boom, okay, that's the proof we're going to bottle that at. And then I started, from my sensory analysis notes, I started taking barrels that were dominant in certain characteristics and matching them up with ones that were less dominant in those characteristics, but maybe had some complementary characteristics. And so I started matching up out of the 12 barrels, 2 barrels at a time. So I made 6 batches out of the 12 barrels and trying to establish some consistency batch to batch, but also provide a spectacular level of flavors. And we were able to accomplish that. It was, we actually offered that at 104 proof. And, again, that was the proof for that particular whiskey that I felt that we didn't over dilute it. We just slowly got it down to that point where the alcohol burn. And quite honestly, a lot of people at tastings thought it was smoother at 104 proof than our 90 proof when we had an 8-year-old single barrel. So it's interesting how people pick up on different things, not looking at the label first, and not preconditioning the mind to think one way or the other. But so
absolutely,
when we finished, when we dumped those barrels, I gave 6 of those barrels to Goodwood Brewing Company in Louisville, Kentucky. I don't know if you're familiar with Goodwood.
I am, yes. Absolutely.
They make some fantastic beers, but they have a walnut brown ale.
Yes.
I really like. And so they put their walnut brown ale in those 6 barrels, and it was in there about 6 to 8 weeks, aging in those barrels. And then when they dumped those barrels, dumped the beer out of those barrels, I got them back and I put bourbon back into those barrels. And I would sample them every few weeks and that just to see kind of how they were progressing. And a little after 6 months of being in those barrels, I felt they had pretty much saturated all the flavor they were going to get out of those barrels.
Sure.
So we bottled that, and it was called Chicken Cock Beer Barrel Select. It was unique. I tell people if you're a true bourbon connoisseur and you're thinking bourbon, when you put that glass to your nose and to your mouth, you're going to miss what's there. You may not like it. All the tastings we did, I'd say 80 to 85% of the people absolutely loved it. The others didn't necessarily care for it. And to me, it actually tasted more like an Irish whiskey. When you smelled it and you tasted it, man, that malted barley was it just really was strong and came out up front. But then as it sat on the palate, man, the caramel, vanilla flavors, the butterscotch notes really opened up, and it had a nice, long, sweet, and creamy finish.
So one of the things that a lot of people kind of maybe turn their noses up at during this day and age is the notion of sourcing. And you definitely, are transparent about the fact that you have been sourcing your own product before it is actually ready, the bourbon and rye that you have actually laid down and everything. Have you found any kind of backlash to the fact that you have sourced your whiskeys, or have people been pretty accepting of it overall?
I don't know if it's backlash. You have some people that are kind of purists and say, well, that's not your whiskey. And
sure.
I get it, but I can name probably 50 different companies that bought whiskey from MGP to get started. It's a business strategy,
Of
and
course.
if you're going to get in the bourbon business, number one, you got to have lots of money, and number two, you got to be patient because it takes time to age good, high quality whiskey, whether it's bourbon, rye, or whatever. And so, again, that business strategy of going out and finding high quality product to source, to get bottles on the shelf, and to create cash flow, that's how you get into the business.
Absolutely, absolutely, and I imagine too that there's this sense of we've got to maintain consistency in quality and flavor profile and everything that people kind of come to expect, especially when you move from sourced products to your own distillate. So, has that been something that's been on your mind too as you transition?
Yeah, I think so. But I think if anything, I think the product that we're laying down, I sample our whiskey at Bardstown Bourbon Company at least every 6 months. And it is progressing very nicely. I mean, it's going to be fantastic. And again, having control of all the elements, as far as the process of making, not only of making the whiskey, but the barrel. The barrel, people don't realize that barrel, 60 to 70% of the flavor in a finished bottle of bourbon or even rye whiskey actually comes from the white oak barrel.
Definitely.
And this last batch that we laid down here a few weeks ago, Perry, it's kind of unique. My 42 years in the business, I don't know if Aaron sent you a copy of my bio on that, but at 42 years, at 12 of those 42 years, I worked for Brown-Forman. And
Right.
9 of the 12 years, I actually managed their cooperage. So I know a fair amount about building a barrel and what it takes to make a high quality barrel. I have one of my consulting clients is a company in West Virginia, and I luckily, about the time I started working with Grain and Barrel Spirits, I also worked with these guys. They're called West Virginia Great Barrel Company. And the beauty of the barrels coming out of West Virginia is the tight grain oak. You've got very mountainous in that Appalachian region. You got very mountainous areas, and so 50% of the trees are growing on the north facing slope, and 50% are growing on a south facing slope, where the north facing slope doesn't get the sunlight, and so it's going to grow slower anyhow. But the rough and rocky soil, basically causes all that white oak to grow pretty slow. And it's important in the fact that you're getting some very tight grain oak. Now, when I say tight grain, by standard, tight grain is 10 annual growth rings per inch. Okay.
Okay.
And so why is that good? Well, it's good because of the chemical composition. You're getting a much higher concentration and a denser level of the hemicellulose and lignin that's in white oak that actually is giving you those caramel and vanilla flavors. The hemicellulose in white oak contains the polysaccharides, and that's the wood sugars. Okay. When you build a barrel and you toast it and you heat up that wood, not charring it down, I'm talking about toasting it. And what you're doing is you're converting that hemicellulose into a caramel substance. Just like when you were in chemistry, I'm sure we did the same thing. We took a spoonful of sugar and held it over a Bunsen burner. What's that do? It starts melting and caramelizing on you.
Right.
That's what you're doing inside that white oak. The same thing with the lignin. When you heat up and toast that barrel, that lignin actually gets converted into vanillin, and that's where the vanilla flavors come from. So the caramel and vanilla flavors, that's where you're creating those flavors. Now, later on in the process, then you char the barrel. Charring is important more from a standpoint of being a charcoal filter. You're blistering the surface, allowing that whiskey to soak into the wood to reach those great caramel and vanilla flavors. But that charcoal, as I said, works like a charcoal filter. It strips out the graininess flavor. When you taste whiskey right off the still, you can taste those grains. The bourbon whiskey, you can taste the corn and the rye or wheat, depending on what's used in the malted barley. And so as the heat of the summer, that whiskey soaks into the barrel and passes through that char layer and strips that graininess flavor and starts picking up those great flavors. And then as the temperatures cool down, it contracts back out of the wood. And so over time, that's where you're getting your maturation and all your great flavors. So I started working with these guys in West Virginia. They built their stave mill, started running it. It was February 2019. And so I went out there the first week of March. I actually conducted some training with their employees and showed them how to properly quarter saw white oak, how to edge it up, how to grade it, what to look for, as far as the defects to remove and how to stack it. And then I went back out there the following month, the first week of April, and did some more training with a new group of employees and just kind of see how they were moving up the learning curve. Well, the following month, the first week of May of 2019, I went out there representing Grain and Barrel Spirits, and I personally hand selected the logs we would use for our next 600 barrels. I probably looked through over 500 logs and called out the ones with a paint can, just basically called out the ones that didn't meet the tight grain or maybe had some other defects that weren't suitable. So I was out there a week, and they cut all those staves, quarter sawed the logs, and cut all those staves and heading and stacked them. And those staves and heading have been sitting out there in that stave yard. They sat out there for a good 10 months. Now, natural air drying is critical to making high quality whiskey as well.
Sure.
When I say natural, a lot of people again don't understand the process and well, why is that different from just sticking it in a kiln? Well, you can cut a quarter saw white oak, and you can take those staves and heading and stack them and put them in a pre-dryer and get them down to about 20% moisture, and then stick them in a kiln and finish drying them down to the 9 to 14% that you want to before it comes in, and you can actually machine that wood without tearing it or damaging it. But the natural air drying, by sitting outside and letting the Mother Nature's elements, the rain, the snow, the wind, the hot, the cold, expose that wood to those elements. And what you'll see is that there'll be a fungus that starts growing on that wood. And that's a good thing. You want that fungus because that microbial activity, what it does, it actually starts degrading the wood and opening up the cellular structure so that when it does rain and you get precipitation, it leaches out a lot of the harsh tannins in the our harsher tannic acid and other phenolic compounds that are bitter to the taste, for whatever product you're actually going to put into that barrel. And so that's an important element. Also, that degradation of wood, when you take it in and machine the staves and heading and start building the barrel, and then you start toasting it, by opening up that cellular structure and being such a tight grain oak, you're able to reach that hemicellulose and that lignin much easier and develop so much more flavor in that barrel. And so March 16th, I was out there in West Virginia, and we actually built those barrels. I oversaw the process, was out there 4 days overseeing the construction of those barrels. March 20th, I was back in Bardstown overseeing the next production of our bourbon. And then March 25th and 26th, those barrels were actually filled with our bourbon. So it's kind of neat and thrilling for me to take some of my 42 years of experience and knowledge in the industry and be able to apply it to every aspect of the bourbon. So unfortunately, that bourbon won't be available, probably won't be bottled till sometime in 2024.
So first off, you basically just gave everybody a masterclass on the chemical engineering behind what makes whiskey, and that was seriously one of the most fascinating things I've ever heard in the almost 3 years that we've been doing this show. Just knowing the ins and outs of why toasting actually helps the whiskey, and why the char encourages some of those flavors too. That was just fascinating to me. And there's a part of my brain that really wants to dive into the scientific aspect of it, but I got an arts degree, so I'm not as there's only so much that I can do in that regard. But I think that there's something so fascinating about thinking about what a tight grain barrel does over time, not just with its first use, so say bourbon or rye in terms of what we classify these whiskeys as, but what it then goes on to become once it has expended its first use. So say it goes on to be a barrel for Irish whiskey or Scotch whiskey. Does in your experience have you found that tight grain barrels have actually helped to improve the quality of secondary usage once they get past the bourbon or rye whiskey stage?
Absolutely, absolutely. But the barrel has to be made properly. Again, there's cooperages nowadays,
Sure.
a number of cooperages, and it's because of price. It's a lot cheaper not to toast a barrel because toasting a barrel takes time. And so a lot of the larger distilleries, when they go to buy barrels, it's less about quality and more about price. And so some cooperages, they just char a barrel. They don't toast it. Now, by charring a barrel without toasting it, you'll get a very thin, what they call a red layer, just on the inside of the char layer, of where that hemicellulose and that lignin have been converted. But by toasting the barrel, you're creating a much deeper penetrating level, and you're actually optimizing the flavors. That whiskey is going to soak halfway into that stave of that barrel. And your stave's roughly an inch thick, 15/16 of an inch thick. So it's going to soak about a half inch into that wood. Well, if you just got a thin layer just on the inside of the char, you're not maximizing, you're not optimizing the flavors that barrel can put out. And so to your point, you're right. Once the bourbon is dumped out of that, aged and dumped out of that barrel has so much more value for the secondary user, be it Scotch whiskey, Irish whiskey, Canadian whiskey, rum, tequila, whatever.
Sure.
There's still a lot of flavor to be extracted.
And the thinking too behind what the bourbon or the rye leaves behind in terms of flavor, not just with what has been imparted from the barrel into the whiskey and then removed, of course, as it is dumped, but I apologize because my brain is trying to can make all these connections and understand just how intricate the creation process is in the chemical side of it. This is something that we could honestly spend an entire hour and a half trying to dissect, and I think we might have to do that at some point with you.
Yeah, I kind of glossed over some of that early on. Actually, it's a lot more. We just barely scratched the surface, Perry. So
Absolutely,
there's a lot more neat
absolutely.
stuff that plays an important role in the quality of the product that you're making.
So in that regard, then, it has the chemical side of it, has the engineering side of it become kind of second nature to you when you're deciding what is going to be the product that it finally hits consumers, hits the market shelves?
Yeah, I'll be very honest with you. I'm not an engineer, and I'm not a chemist. Okay, I have a business.
But you have a very good understanding, it sounds like, of what goes on beneath the surface.
I
in
tell
this case.
people, I'm just a slow learner. It took me 42 years to learn. So, but again, that's part of the beauty of it. I've been very blessed and fortunate throughout my career to work for some great companies and work with some great people. And when you're around these knowledgeable people, you turn into a sponge and you try to soak up as much of that knowledge as you can while you can. And so I've been very fortunate in that regard. So through all those years and all the things that I've done in this industry, as I said, I'm thrilled to death to have the opportunity now to be able to have a controlling factor on every step of the process. People say, well, how long does it make to make good bourbon whiskey? Thinking that, well, the age of it. And I said, well, it actually takes somewhere between 80 to 125 years or more. You start with that tree. You take that tree, okay, and the white oak in West Virginia, it actually averages somewhere between 12 to 15 annual growth rings per inch.
My
So
goodness.
if you take let's say a 20-inch diameter white oak, which is pretty average, okay? Take a 20-inch diameter white oak log. And so at 12 growth rings per inch, you take the radius of that. So you're looking at 10 inches. Well, 10 inches times 12 growth rings, that's a 120-year-old tree.
My goodness.
So it from start to finish, it takes a while. Now, I'm not going to be around and haven't been around long enough to experience that, start my own, plant my own acorns and that. But, what's out there and available, hopefully we've got a pretty good handle on what it takes and what we can do with it. So I'm excited about this bourbon. We've got aging at Bardstown Bourbon Company, and the first bourbon will be coming out in 2022 sometime. Again, we're probably going to bottle it in the package that you see there in our standard Kentucky Straight Bourbon whiskey package. And it'll be probably 4.5 years old before we bottle it, but we'll hold on to some to do some older offerings as well, special offerings later on.
And in general, I mean, I look forward to finding out what those products are going to be like. But I definitely want us to talk specifically about this rye whiskey right now. I know we've touched on the mash bill, we've touched on the sourcing behind it as well. But what makes Chicken Cock Kentucky Straight Rye Whiskey unique from all of the other rye whiskeys that are out on the market right now?
We talked a little bit about the mash bill and being the 95% rye, and I think there are some great ryes out there right now. For years I wasn't a big fan of rye whiskey, and that's because a lot of the rye whiskey had corn in it, and it kind of masks some of the great spiciness. But I think with this one here, it kind of blew me away. Now, if you look on the label, I think there by the UPC, it says at least 2 years old. Okay. Of course, it has to be at least 2 years old to be a straight rye whiskey. But again, I didn't go look at the age. I just looked at what the flavors were. And what I find unique about that, as I said, is the complexity. On the nose, I'm getting, the spicy notes and the peppery notes, and not so much black pepper, but for me, I get something like a paprika and maybe a little cumin and some of the spices, and then you kind of blend a little cinnamon, and it's just amazing the different things that you pick out of it. And then again, on the finish, you get a little peppery on the finish, but it opens up. I mean, the mouthfeel is phenomenal. I was talking with somebody the other day, and they were commenting on the buttery mouthfeel, and I said, that's one of the things I picked up on both the bourbon and the rye is the buttery mouthfeel, and if you add glycerin to a product, that you'll get some of that mouthfeel. Well, you can't add glycerin to either one of these whiskeys. But that's what it almost tastes like, because you get that little creaminess, and so I kind of like that as well.
I think that really, even at 2 years old, and we talk about this on the show quite often, how despite the fact that rye whiskeys might sometimes clock in at a younger age, they do wind up seeming to have a lot more flavor and a lot more body to it than younger bourbons might. And, of course, the rye taking on that flavor component that, is imparted by the barrel, it's definitely evident even at a younger age. So I will say I applaud you guys for the product that I have in this glass right now. This is an astounding 2-year-old rye whiskey, and I'm even going to remove the 2-year-old part of it. This is a very, very good rye whiskey, and I'm not trying to bark up a tree or anything, but I'm being very honest with you. It is well-rounded. It has an incredible mouthfeel. There is, and this is one of the things too that I love about 95.5 Ryes. It's not just the spice. It's not just this kind of punchy in the mouth, full-bodiedness. There is still a subtle sweetness to it that I think is prominent on the front of the palate, even as it moves into the finish, and it almost reminds me of like an oatmeal or something of that nature. But it has just a very gentle aspect to it that complements the spicy full bodiedness of it so well. And at 2 years old and 90 proof, I am very, very impressed with this. So I'm gonna give this a seal of approval at the very least
Well,
for the.
thank you, Perry. I appreciate the comments, and I think you're spot on with your analysis. I mean, it's again, I don't get hung up on age too much. You know, now when I say that, I've had some young bourbons that they're just too young, and I've had some bourbons that people try
Yes.
to accelerate the maturation, let's say.
Oh, we won't talk too much about
Yeah,
them.
I'm not bashing anybody. It's just, but everybody's palate's different. For my palate, that's not what I like. For aging good whiskey,
Yes.
it takes time and patience. And but again, depending on the product you put in the barrel and depending on the barrel you put that product in to mature, can play such an important role in the flavor extractions you get out. And this particular rye, at 4 years, and we may have some that will probably be a little bit older. I think what you'll find is that some of the peppery, hotter peppery notes will start to soften a little bit. It'll still be complex.
Yes.
It'll start to soften a little bit, and you'll get more of the butterscotching and the sweety, more sweeter flavors. And so I think it'll be interesting to see how this progresses and some of the stuff we're doing in the future progresses.
And I'm very excited too about this finished rye that you all have planned as well. The righteous blonde.
Yeah, so let me talk about that. I was talking about before we had a little hiccup there with the system. I
Yes.
was talking about we did a collaboration with Goodwood Brewing Company, and the first one we came out with was called Chicken Cock Beer Barrel Select, where we actually put bourbon back into the barrels that they used for aging and finishing their walnut brown ale. Well, we did the same thing. The first batch of this Kentucky straight bourbon that you have gave 6 barrels to Goodwood Brewing Company. They put a blonde ale in those barrels. And again,
Oh wow.
it was in there for about 6 to 8 weeks. When they dumped the beer out, I got them back, and I put some rye whiskey back into those barrels. Now, the rye whiskey I was able to acquire. It was actually a little over 3 years old. And again, very good rye whiskey. But we had very limited quantity we could acquire. So I bought enough to fill those 6 barrels with rye whiskey. And it actually rye whiskey went back into those beer barrels on Halloween Day. So it's been in there, December, January, February, March, 5.5 months, I guess. And,
Sure.
we were supposed to bottle it here a few weeks ago, but unfortunately, with this virus situation, that kind of got delayed. But before the end of this month, it's supposed to be bottled, and we did a little play on words. It's actually called Chicken Cock Righteous Blonde, and righteous is spelled RYETEOUS. So,
Yes.
so it's, again, I mean, the flavors on this stuff, you think that the rye has a great complexity. Man, wait till you try this righteous blonde. It is phenomenal.
Oh, I can't wait.
It is phenomenal. And again, unfortunately, 6 barrels, it's going to yield less than 1,700 bottles. So it's going to be very limited edition, but it's fantastic. Pretty special whiskey.
That's fantastic. I cannot wait to actually get to try that. Greg, I really do appreciate you virtually sitting down with me for this little interview. I am so excited to see the future of Chicken Cock over the next couple of years. I know that you guys have really great things planned, not just in the barrel, but what's on the shelf at this point as well. Is there anywhere that people can find you on social media if they would like to do that?
Yeah, Chicken Cock. We have our own website. I'm connected with a couple of bourbon groups and that. But the best way to get a hold of me is through the website.
Sure. Awesome. And that is just at chickencockwhiskey.com. The link will be in the description below for this episode. Greg, I want to say thank you so much again for sitting down with me. Thank you to Aaron, who set up this interview as well. It is always a really great time to get to talk to master distillers and folks of the like. So, Greg, I hope to have you back on soon as well, so we can actually get into the chemical side of everything, because my mind was blown, but I know that there's more to come. So I appreciate the masterclass that you gave on that in the short, like 6 minutes that you talked about how barrels being charred and seasoned and toasted affects the whiskey. That was incredible, man. Oh my gosh.
Well, hopefully we can. I'd love to hook back up with you again sometime down the future, Perry, and maybe we can elaborate on some of that stuff a little further.
And hopefully we can do it in person too once all the coronavirus stuff is over.
That would be awesome, man. I would love that.
We'll see. But thank you again, Greg. I really do appreciate it.
All right, pal. My pleasure.
My thanks to Aaron Brost, who got that interview set up. And Greg, thank you so much for sitting down with me again. Man, what a good conversation I had with him. We touched on this whole thing to catch you guys up to speed, Curtis and Swan. We had this whole conversation on how toasting the barrel does an extra layer of like creating flavors like at a chemical level. And it just like, if you had a camera on me during the recording of that, my mouth would have been open and there just would have been drool rolling down my mouth. Like, just like, I've got no idea what's going on here. But I want to get him back on sometime to do a full episode just about the science side of it. I think it would be so cool to hear what he has to say about that, because he's got, 42 years in the business? I mean, just an insane amount of information and experience tucked away. So we'll have to get him on sometime soon. I wanted you guys to try the Chicken Cock Bourbon and their brand new Chicken Cock Straight Rye Whiskey. So we can start with either one. What do you guys feel like?
Oh, I'm pouring the bourbon right now.
Gotcha. Right now.
Right this second. Because I've not had any of this, but I've seen their like limited edition 10-year with like the ornamental cap to it and stuff.
Yes.
That thing looks awesome.
So we're doing the bourbon, correct?
Yes, we'll start with the bourbon. I think this video is definitely going to go up for Patreon.
They'll love it.
They will definitely love it. I'm gonna leave it uncut too, so that
Me going.
yes, and you coming back on and flipping off the camera, that was good too.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. Perfect.
It's going to be my new profile picture on Facebook.
I wouldn't mind it. Yeah, do it.
Guys, how do you feel about the bourbon so far? How do you feel about the bourbon after having nosed it?
Go ahead, Swan.
I'm a little confused. I don't know what the age is. I actually don't want to know. I want to kind of get into it a little bit before we find out.
Yeah, and he didn't disclose the age to me either.
Okay.
So I don't really know myself.
It's got like some younger qualities to it, but at the same time, it's got some like smokiness that I really enjoy. Mostly on the nose with the smokiness.
The palate does not drink like a younger bourbon, though.
No, but it does drink like... It drinks like a bourbon that's been a little bit watered down.
Yes, I would agree with that. Because I don't think the proof is that high.
No, it's 90 proof.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you can tell that they definitely kind of played around with the product itself to get it to a specific flavor profile. And I really don't mind it. I think that it's a very easy sipper. And it's one that people can kind of easily access, I would say, in just terms of, what they might be feeling like they want to drink. What am I saying? I'm saying that it's not overly complex, but it has a lot of really interesting flavors to it that can still entertain bourbon drinkers of all types.
It's reminding me a lot of some of the Michter's profiles.
Yes, absolutely.
Very, very similar, which I like because Michter's is not price wise approachable for a lot of people. But this is I don't know. It kind of joins that like joyful category of like Wild Turkey, Fighting Cock. I mean, just the weird little names and stuff. I mean, I definitely think it's smokier than Michter's. I've not had any of the toasted barrel finishes, but just after hearing you kind of talk about how into that toasting he was, I think this definitely brings some of that into it. I don't know quite what it does, but that weird smokiness I'm getting while simultaneously getting a slight youngness to the bourbon. I think that's that toasted barrel.
Yeah, I totally agree.
I am happy with the kind of complexity a little bit on the palate of just some of that toasted barrel, and it has some like layered qualities of it.
Yeah, I agree. I would love to see this at cask strength.
Oh yeah,
Because I will say, even at 90 proof, the spice that you get towards like the end of the palate, beginning of the finish, it drinks like it's probably 95, 100. It feels like it's up there a little bit.
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. This is what they call their flagship bourbon, right? This is what they offer just kind of as a standard product. It is $60 though.
So not as far as approachable. It's right there with Michter's.
Exactly. Yeah. That being said, though, again, I really don't dislike it. I really don't.
No, I don't dislike it either.
No, I think it's pretty solid. The $60 price point is, here or there, but I think it's a solid bourbon.
For sure. Do you guys have a glass empty that you could use? You could pour the rye into as well?
Yep.
Swan doesn't.
I do now.
So I will say that the rye. Let me just say, I like the rye so much that this sample bottle is already empty.
Oh,
Wow.
Okay.
I'll give you a couple quick stats on it before we get to in the weeds. It is 95% rye, 5% malted barley, so it's a very high rye. It's 2 years old, and it is also 90 proof.
So I just think it's interesting that like the 2-year rise and stuff are coming out, and I think that the ones that are younger like this that have like that 95% or like super high rye content are actually a little bit more flavorful and developed because they don't have that 51% or like barely legal rye. I tend to enjoy the ones that are a little more high rye content, like the New Riff. They've got that 95% and then 5% malted rye. Those just seem to be a little more developed. Like this compared to like the Sazerac we just had earlier in the episode, I much prefer this. It just has a little more flavor than it imparts. It's not doing that kind of Woodford thing where it's trying to appease to everyone. It's definitely down its own lane, and one that I like. So I'm all for something that's a little more streamlined to a specific flavor profile.
Yeah, absolutely. And again with that high rye content, I mean that's going to get you basically just more flavor in general. Once you kind of eliminate some of the sweetness that and the less sponginess. I always kind of think of rye as like more of a sponge, I guess, like in the way that it kind of absorbs the flavors from the barrel. So once you kind of eliminate the corn, which is not going to impart as many flavors, it then kind of allows the whiskey to I would say breathe a little bit more. So this is a 2-year-old rye whiskey. What do you guys think the price is on this one? Considering the last one was $60.
If I had to guess, I'd say it'd be somewhere around 80. I feel like sometimes the ryes fetch a little more, and especially in the category right now with like Peerless and some of the other ones that are fetching a pretty good price for a 2-3 year old rye. Some of them are worth it. I feel like 80.
Yeah, for me, I think that this is definitely going to be worth the price. I'm going to go with the under on what Swan was saying. I think it's going to be around, that 70, 75 price range.
So it is actually $70. So look, that's not an insignificant amount of money. I mean, you are digging a little bit deeper so you can pay for that, but in regards to how it stacks up with other ryes that are kind of in this category, we're talking about, Peerless rye, barrel rye, even on up to, I feel like we can include maybe like a Thomas H. Handy in there too.
And don't forget Pinhook. I mean, that's another one that I feel
Yes.
like it's kind of the opposite end of the spectrum.
Yeah.
I don't enjoy that one as much, and it's a 2-3 year old rye.
And it's also significantly cheaper.
Oh,
I mean, you're
okay.
getting that for
Sure.
like $30 less. The Ride On, this guy,
Yeah.
was. I made a horse noise. I didn't mean to. It was $40, I think.
Okay.
Gotcha.
So
I will say about the Ride On, wasn't that the one that we tried maybe about a month or so ago? Is
Yeah,
that the
we
one
were-
from sourced
Castle
from
and Key.
Castle and Key?
yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
I guess the only thing we'll say about that one is that we weren't as impressed, as what we're having with this. So I think the price difference is probably adjusted on that a little bit.
Yeah. Age is but a number, I suppose. So I just want to say thank you again to the folks at Chicken Cock for sending me these samples, and I appreciate you guys for getting to try it. Well, I'm happy you got to try it along with me as well.
Yeah, our socially distanced delivery from Perry.
Yes.
Yes.
I was behind the glass shield of my car window when I delivered it to Swan, especially since we had
And-
just gotten off of a 10-hour shift from Kroger. And Curtis, I was basically out the door for most of our conversation.
Like 6 feet apart for sure.
Yes. Yes.
And I was sitting there going, this is like the first human interaction I've had in like
Yeah.
like months. This is great.
I feel alive now.
Yeah, I know. I was like, I'm having a great day now.
I feel like you guys did the Spider-Man meme where they like point at each other, just from
Yeah.
one outside delivering bourbon, the other one just in the door frame.
Yeah.
That's not too far off. I mean, that's fairly accurate. All right, so we have some questions from our Facebook group. All you have to do to join that is just head to facebook.com and search for This Is My Bourbon Group, and we'll get you in there. There's just a couple questions to confirm that as well. We're going to do this in a quick fire format because we have a lot of questions that we have to get through. You guys were curious this week. First one's from Ian McMaster. He said, Perry, do you have a favorite dog? No, I love them both equally. Swan, when's the last time that you saw the OG version of Heaven Hill Bottled and Bond?
About a month ago, saw it at Justin's in the place across the street, heavily marked up.
Gotcha. Kurt, why do you love Henry McKenna so much?
Yeah, for me, I think it's a combination of things of it being a 10-year, a single barrel, a bottled and bond. I think all of those combinations really just brings out a lot of great things. Everyone's a little bit different. I really like the 100 proof point at bottled and bond. I just think, Heaven Hill in general. We've talked about this quite a bit, but we really enjoy Heaven Hill products. So
Yeah.
I think that's probably it.
Yeah, absolutely. Tony, I think I've been saying his last name wrong. I think it's Mercury, but I've been saying Mercury. It's got to be Mercury, right? Anyway, it doesn't matter. He said, "What are you all most looking forward to after quarantine?" For me, it's sitting down at a restaurant again. For me, I very much am looking forward to restaurants, but I'm also looking forward to hugging people again, and also to get to have a drink with somebody That's not myself or the dog.
You know that feeling when you see the fajitas go by your table and you're like, those are my fajitas, but they're not your fajitas? I miss that feeling. I want that
Aw.
again.
You even want the disappointment side of not being in quarantine. That's fair. That's fair.
Yeah, it's okay. I'll just eat myself in the giant bowl of chips and salsa in front of me, you know.
Yeah, that literally just made my day because that's hilarious. Because everybody has had that experience of like, oh. No. Yeah. What I'm missing? Yeah, I mean, just going out. Just like actually being able to do stuff. I know that's lame, but it's just like go to Target, go to Barnes and Noble, go to
Go to
hang out
Best
with
Buy. I
people.
haven't been to Best Buy in years, and I just want to go see Best Buy. I want to go look at the app, the equipment, and everything.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I just want a Nintendo Switch already.
I've got mine. It's great. This next one is not a question. It's a fun fact, but it's from Dustin Whitaker. He said the name of bourbon originally derived from the House of Bourbon in France in the 16th century, that 16th century French royalty family. Thanks, Dustin. The next one's from Jordan Bernsdorf. He said, what is one positive impact you want to see from the COVID-19 pandemic? Whether it be a national large-scale impact like shipping liquor nationally or even small personal impact like more meaningful times drinking with friends. I like the latter part of that one. I'm looking forward to being able to be appreciative of spending time with people again.
I want an option in my Papa John's order to ship Jim Beam to my house instead of a 2-liter. That's where I'm at.
Yeah, I think that's awesome.
That's great.
I think that, yeah, I think this has just been I would like to see a lot of people, and I think it already has, is showing a lot of appreciation for some of the smaller things.
I want to smell roses.
Not
again.
taking this stuff as for granted, you know.
Absolutely. Eric Black asks, how many times have you mowed your lawn since being isolated? Once. You guys live in apartments, so 0.
I don't have a lawn.
Yeah, my front lawn is a concrete slab that people park on.
Yeah. I guess technically I've mowed once because
You shaved?
they came and mowed it.
Oh, fair enough. Brennan Rogers II, great name. He asks, what is your favorite Texas bourbon? And what Texas bourbon are you looking forward to trying that you have not yet had the opportunity to? So going back
Know
to...
why?
You've not had any? Is that what you said, Kurt?
I've had like maybe 2, so I would not be the source of information for this. However, we have a box apparently, so that's pretty cool.
got a
Maybe
box.
I'll be able to try some of those. Yeah.
I like Iron Root Harbinger. It's pretty good.
Yes. I have not found one that I've been over the moon about just yet, but I do agree. I like Iron Root Harbinger quite a bit. Alan Cornett. Hello, Alan. He said, what do you know about the new Old Fitz 16? It's a 16-year-old Old Fitz bottled and bond in a decanter that comes from Heaven Hill. It's a wheated bourbon. I don't know anything else about it.
Other than I want to try it.
Yes, exactly. Don Nishida asks, what's your go-to meal pairing beverages? For myself, I enjoy whiskey either before or after a meal. With meals, I'll vary depending on the cuisine. Steak or pasta with wine, burger or ribs with the beer, sushi with sake, etc. I love like a beer with a burger, or even beer with pizza.
Yeah, same here. I mean, beer just pairs really well with like a burger and stuff. I do like if I am having, a pasta or a nice, more of a higher quality of meal, then I'll probably go with a whiskey or a bourbon. The sake and sushi, I've tried it before. I need to do it more often.
I'm a big fan of some Knob Creek single barrels with a steak, or I really like sushi with Hancock's Presidential Reserve.
Yes.
That one's a good one.
Cole Boozer asks, what would you do if your internet went down during this pandemic? Happened to me last night, and thankfully the internet provider's breaker was turned back on within the hour. I would bash my head through the wall.
I would adopt
I've
another
already
cat.
bashed my head through the wall.
Kurt's internet went out
I've
already
had
a
it
couple
go-
of times.
Quite a few times. One was for like a solid 7 to 8 hours. So what I did during that time, I was pissed.
I got blind drunk and I was mad.
That's I kid, but that's literally what happened.
This next question comes from somebody named Sean Thomas Moore. What the heck is that? He said, when is my unemployment check hitting? I'm about 76% done with the application and my check hasn't shown up yet. Well, Sean Thomas Moore, I'm not gonna answer your question. Because I will not entertain somebody who is 76% done with anything. 77 or higher. That's what I always say.
Okay. I'll get back to you next week.
What do you mean you?
Don't worry about it. It's fine.
Patrick Starkey asks, when are we all going to watch Arrested Development or Twin Peaks? So we want to do some kind of watch along with people where we go through like a movie or a TV show or something. It'll probably be Patreon only, but we'll figure that out soon. I really want to do that. I think it'd be great to, during quarantine, give us something else to do. Blake Upchurch, rather.
I'm totally down. We should do that.
Yes, I'm totally. I want to do it so badly. Blake Upchurch asks, where is the best place to bourbon hunt in the United States outside of Kentucky? Thinking about a road trip when COVID-19 is over.
Texas.
Texas is a good one. Yeah. Tennessee. Apparently there's some good stuff out in California. Somebody was saying that they can still find Weller Antique near them. So whoever that is, I don't know.
Yeah.
And our last question comes from Donnie Webb. He said, have you been to the Lincoln Road package store in Hattiesburg, Mississippi? Who's up for a road trip after this is all over? I have not been, but I am totally up for a road trip.
I have not been, but I'm down.
I don't even know what that is, but I mean, I'll go. It's fine.
I'm always intrigued.
They have some of the best picks in the country. It's the
For sure down.
store that does the owner and Dixon Dedman. They do their birthday picks for single barrels every year. They do them together because they have the same birthday.
Oh, cool.
Anyway, okay, that's all the questions. That was our rapid question segment from our Facebook group. Guys, tips and bits for this week.
I have been watching a new car channel. I'm obsessed because I drive a piece of crap car and I love it. But at the same time, like, just watch people build crazy things. There's a YouTube channel called Faster Proms. And within this past week, he's been like quarantined to a shop. So he's just been making content from his shop, and he just bought a smart car. And he decided to put like a 600 horsepower engine into it, and for no reason. So it's just a super high-powered smart car that just flies down the road. I don't know. It's great. I think it's cool. And at the end of every video, he like apparently does something like he either breeds or takes care of like golden retrievers. So there's like 4 of them just running around having a great time. Highlight of my day.
I like this guy. What was it called again?
Faster Proms. It's a weird thing. I can put it in the chat because it's a strange way to spell it.
Sure.
Yeah.
Kurt?
For me, I've been on the HBO train, and this is a past show though. The Sopranos. I just started it, and very good, very good. So I would recommend going and watching that. I mean, I think a lot of people already know about this, and I'm just late to the party.
We just finished up Schitt's Creek. The finale for Schitt's Creek came out, and I'm gonna miss that show a lot. It was one of my favorite shows, maybe of all time, to be very honest. I've been going back through Twin Peaks as I've been doing this new unemployment gig. That's something. And so at the beginning of the show, I mentioned that I watched a movie until late last night. I watched the best picture from this year's Oscars, Parasite, last night.
Super good.
Holy
I've seen it.
moly, that movie is so good.
Very good. It deserves the Oscar.
It absolutely does. I was seriously on the edge of my seat about halfway through the movie. I was like, what is happening right now?
Yeah.
Oh my god.
It's really good. Also, Jojo Rabbit, very good.
Oh, I've got to watch
Bills
Jojo
itself-
Rabbit.
it bills itself as a comedy. There's some heavy stuff to it, though.
I'm not surprised by that at all. I'm not surprised by that. Considering it takes place during World War II and the Holocaust.
It does have comedic relief.
Yeah, it's Taika Waititi. He's a funny man. Well, I think we're going to go ahead and wrap the show up for you all this week. Thank you all so much for listening. Oh, and by the way, if you've not listened to this, the first episode of the ISO Sessions, that is in your feed as well. It was with Matt Porter from ADHD Whiskey. Really fun 30-minute conversation with him. So go check out this first ISO Sessions. The next one is dropping on this Friday, probably around noon. So go and listen to that as well. Thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in this week. Guys, thanks for being here as always. Where can people find you on social media?
I'm at My Bourbon Finder on Facebook and Instagram.
And you can find me at KurtCon on Instagram and Kurt_Con15 on Twitter.
And I am at PureRaider1492 on all social media channels. The show itself is at My Bourbon Pod on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter. You can give us a 5-star rating and review in the iTunes podcast app. And if you leave a 5-star rating and review, we will read out your review on the show. And we do have a new review this week. It is from Tony_Merc. I'm pretty sure, Tony, that's you from the Facebook group Tony Mercury. I think that's also Tony Bag of Donuts from the It's Bourbon Night live stream feed. So thanks for being a listener and supporter of the show, Tony. He said, Perry and the crew host a great show. I always learn at least a couple things and points me in the right direction for the next bottled hunt. Thanks, guys, and keep up the excellent work. Cheers. Thank you, Tony Bag of Donuts. Appreciate you, buddy. You can find all of our apparel and merchandise at bourbonshop.threadless.com. We got a sale going on there right now. Like I said earlier, you can become a part of our Facebook group. Just search for This Is My Bourbon Group on Facebook.com, and you can become a part of that there. You can leave a call-in or a voicemail, rather, for our Barrel Rings call-in segment at 859-428-8253. You can leave a voicemail for us, and we'll listen to it on the show. And it's always a lot of fun. Curtis, you have something you want to talk about. What's going on, buddy?
So I saw his name, and I think it's Mercury.
Do you?
I do. I don't think it's Mercury.
Tony, right?
Because there's no Y, it's an I. Mercury.
Yeah. Tony, let us know,
please.
because we've hooked on phonics. Tony, let us know if we've been saying your name wrong or not. Anyway, and last but not least, you can become a patron of the show at patreon.com/mybourbonpodcast for as little as $1 a month. For as little as $5 a month, you get bonus content like our pregame chats that drop every week the day before the episode, or our bonus episodes that come out every month. New one's actually going to be coming out this week. Lots of content from the It's Bourbon Night, from the This Is My Bourbon podcast stream. Feed. Whatever. Oh my gosh, we got to get out of here. I'm losing my mind slowly but surely. Thank you all so much for listening. We'll see you guys next week, but until then, I'm Perry.
I'm Curtis.
And I'm Swan.
And This Is My Bourbon Podcast.